Hi, everybody. This is CC and JT. I'm a chair where productions value goes to die. Oh gosh, English is definitely my second language. Where production values go to die. This one's CC.
And this is JT.
And we are so pleased to have KJ Waters on with us today. KJ is part of our effort to help writers write. KJ agreed to come on to share her experience on the technical aspects and the interesting aspects of being a writer. We've had so much fun with these episodes, with these podcasts, with these episodes. We are learning so much and sharing this knowledge. And so, KJ, thank you for coming on board.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm looking forward to this.
So, tell us a little bit about the KJ Waters experience.
Well, I started writing in 2005 after I went through 4 major hurricanes in 6 weeks. And I thought, this is a pretty good backdrop. I had just moved to Florida with my 2 little kids, and 3 days later we had a hurricane hit. So I hadn't really thought about being an author until I had quit my job. I had my second kid, and I was like, I just want to be home with the kids. But a few years into that, I was like, I was the director of marketing, and I had a kind of a busy job. So I was like, finger painting and all this cute stuff is great, but I wanted to do something more. So after those hurricanes, I was like, that's a super duper exciting backdrop for something. And I really love Diana Gabaldon's Outlander series. So the thought of a modern woman being put back into time and the rules are totally different. How does she react? And that's kind of the premise of her series. I was like, hurricanes, time travel, that's pretty exciting. That's something that I would want to read. So that's where my journey started. It took me 10 years to write what I thought was one book. As I explained my story to a couple of friends, they're like, wow, that's a lot. That's probably like 3 or 4 books. So that's 3 or 4 books. They were right. I added a bunch of stuff, but it's like I hadn't written before. I didn't exactly know what I was doing. And I took the 10 years because I had kids. We moved. We did things, life. But I also didn't want the pressure. I was doing it for fun. I made up a whole world of people that didn't exist, as all of us writers do if you write fiction. And I just found it really fun, but I didn't know what I was doing. So it took me a while to kind of figure it out. And then in 2015, I published the first book, Stealing Time, and then took too long in between to publish the rest. But I just published the 4th book in the series this past September. Is when I reached out to you all to see if I could come on your podcast and talk about stuff, writing and books and all the good things you guys talk about.
Well, congratulations.
Yes, that's a long road.
Yeah.
I am very familiar with the idea of writing with kids in the background and, having a full-time job and everything on top of that. How did you work out the time to do it? Were you one of those, I wake up at 4 a.m. to do it before everybody's awake, or did you do things later at night?
Yeah, well, when the kids were small, they took naps, and then there was church camp, and then there was this and that. So, you're like, you find these little moments where you fill it in. Ballet practice, piano lessons, all the little pieces of time. And as long as you just decide you're going to do it and make the commitment, it does make a big difference. If you can, I got to the point where my brain was like, okay, you psych yourself up as you're getting the kids ready. I'm like, get ready, brain, we're doing this. And so you kind of train yourself to do that. Now that my kids are older, my youngest is 18, I think it would be really hard for me to try to do that because there's so many. Think about a piano lesson, like how flippin' distracting is that? But when these are your times, and if you're really committed to it, I did write at night once the kid went to bed. So 9 or 10 o'clock, I'd be like, I'm out. I'm gonna go hide in my room and take that time for me. So, and then as time went by, I ended up converting this basement into, instead of a collection of toys, it turned into my office, and that gave me the space where it's just upstairs. I can still hear the chaos, but I can tune it out enough. As a mom, you always have that little antenna up of what's happening up there. They're not killing each other yet. I'll stay down here, keep writing. And that made a big difference. Like little kids, you can't do that because you really have to physically watch them. But as you get older, I made the commitment to find a spot that was mine. I had I got a computer set up and everything was here so that whenever I had time to write, I could just hide downstairs, do what I needed to do, and then, be part of the family and stuff again. So as I've evolved, I've found more time for me. And now my habit is when I wake up, My fresh brain gives an hour at least. I tell myself it only has to be an hour. Usually it's longer because I love it, but I'm also an author consultant. That's how I make the rest of my money. And so their projects always have deadlines and important things, and sometimes my stuff gets squeezed out, especially as the end of the year approaches and everyone wants their books out by Christmas. I have to get, like, January is my go-to time. It's like January, February, March, April. It's like, I got to do it. I got to get like 2 or 3 hours a day so that I can get my stuff done. And then next is client work. So I get my fresh brain. They get my semi-used brain, but it's still good.
Yeah, but fresh brain, of course, is relative concerning all the things that you have going on with 4 kids. I wanted to focus on something that, that's going to be a trigger word, and the word is marketing. That's automatically, it's for publishers. But your journey to the marketing of your books is different from probably most writers because you have the educational and professional background. So unlike us, and probably unlike more than probably half of independent writers, your eyes, you knew what you were getting into when you were going to publish a book, when it came to the marketing aspect of it, especially since marketing is like 90% of independent book publishing.
Yes.
But you still must have been surprised. So what was the thing that you knew was going to happen? And what was the thing that you were surprised when it came to marketing your books, even with your education and professional background?
Yeah. Well, my professional background was marketing healthcare, behavioral health, and HMOs. So it doesn't always apply. I knew the basic concepts of marketing: repeat, clear message, good writing, good visuals, that kind of stuff. So those were all in the bag, but I had no clue about the book publishing market. And back in 2005, that was a very different place. KDP, Amazon Publishing, was kind of new. There was a lot more money in it back then, and not as much competition. Of course, everyone that was in it, most of the writers that self-published were looked at very differently than they are now. Now that we've had these big independent authors that have made a bunch of money and then publishers come to them. It's a totally different market. So you're taking the information that I have about how do you market in a world, I was like, I didn't know what KDP was. I didn't know about where do you put your books out to market. I've been in social media. That was also a lot different back then. So I kind of knew you got to reach as many people as you can. And, so it was definitely a benefit because I had the marketing mindset. But the tools of the trade for publishing, total learning curve, which is why I went into author consulting, because I realized there's such a learning curve. The technical aspects of how do you create files to upload, what do you do with Amazon once you get it there? There's a huge learning curve, and most people who are starting into it make all the mistakes that I made, and some not as bad of mistakes and some much worse. So, and then the element of the predatory publishers that come to you with these great offers, and you feel like someone's finally going to take care of me, and then they just take your money and don't really do anything. So I was hoping to be the voice out there that would help people more, like I can coach you or I can do it for you, but I'm also an author and I understand that you want to just get your books out there and you don't want it to be this awful like lechery where people are just out to take your money, time, and creativity. So I came from that perspective, and I think that gives me a different outlook on how to market too, because I need to learn the tools of the trade for my clients and then also for my own stuff. So it's been working out pretty well.
And it is something that we all go through. I know a lot of us now are getting those emails where it's like, oh yeah, your book is great. And, unfortunately, AI comes into play a lot because people are getting these emails where someone has actually scraped their book and they give you a description of your book and tell you. So how do you go about advising your clients to make sure that they don't fall for some of these things where it looks like someone has actually read your book, but they haven't?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I say steal the amazing things they said about your book and use it for your marketing, because most of them are put together so well. So take some of those sentences. I always send them off to my assistant. I'm like, they did the work. Let's use it. It sounded great. I want to read my book after reading that too. It's like, yay. But first thing I do, and I tell all my clients, is if there's a publisher or a company, I got something today, we're a movie studio, we want your book. I'm like, well, which book? The person whose email didn't match the name of the company, looked for the name of the company, they have no website, and then I responded back, I probably shouldn't have, but they sent me like 3, and I'm like, which book are you talking about? Like, is it just a generic cut and paste? They did tell me the book, and then they gave me this, instead of answering, what's your website, they told me how great my book was. And I'm like, scam, obviously. But my advice to everyone out there is to take the name of the company or name of the person, go to Google and type in that and put in scam or complaints. And that'll bring up everything out on the internet that has either people have complained about it. If nothing comes up, that's not good either. You want to at least see a website, or sometimes it'll show you, sometimes when you put in complaints, it's people saying great things about it. And you're like, maybe they are real. Maybe they do good work. You don't always know. There's so many people that are attacking you. And I call it attack because that's what it is. They're coming after your money. And it sounds amazing with the AI stuff. They're just like, who knows if they even speak English. Used to be you could kind of see they don't know how to write English, and so you're like, what are they going to do for me, really? Like, obviously scam. Now they have such a polished presentation, but if you have seen one, you know what the next ones are going to look like, and it helps. When they first came out, though, you're just like, oh my gosh, that's so great. But you're just knowing enough, you're like, you wrote 15 paragraphs of how great my book is, and I'm like, really? Are you sure you're real? So you have a few tools, Google, and then there's also the Alliance for Independent Authors. They have a site that can tell you which places are scam. They have a lot of good information on there for publishers that are questionable. They give them like a red light, green light, cautionary stuff. So that's a really good tool as well.
Excellent, excellent. So let's dive into the KJ Waters experience, and let's talk about a series. You said you published your fourth book in the series. Again, congratulations. So, KJ, when you did your first book, I'm not going to mention names, did you intend to do a series, or were you going, okay, thank God this book is done and I can just go on to whatever I'm going to write next, like I did? So was a series planned, and if the series was planned, how did you go about it?
Well, the series was planned because, as I told you at the beginning, I wrote way too much, which is kind of my thing. I have a lot of ideas and a lot of plot points, and so I knew that it wasn't going to be just one really long book. So I cut it down. I had to recreate the ending to make it an ending and not a middle. But I didn't realize how much I was going to put into I have 4 books in this series, and if you're a normal person, you probably write 100,000 words and you think that's a lot. My third book, I wrote 185,000 words because I replotted it during COVID. I got locked in my room away from the family, and I was like, this is the best thing ever. And I replotted the whole thing and had a bunch of ideas. And I actually had put it in Scrivener, and I thought it was in there twice. So I went to Scrivener. I'm like, what's up with this? Why is this so long? And then I realized, no, wait, I wrote all that. So for me, it was like, it's kind of hard to capture just the key elements and make sure that the reader's, not failing too many things. So for me, I kind of wrapped up this series with this book 4, but I know I have 2 more books. The reason I did that was because I wanted the readers, because I took so long in between works. I'm like, I want you to feel like there's a beginning, middle, and end. There's a definite, I've wrapped up all the little bows on all the threads that are through the whole series. And then I'm going to work on another series. So I'm like, I want you guys to hang out for a little bit. I'll be back. I've got a whole bunch of more ideas. And like I said, it's so easy for me to write in this world. I've been in it since 2005. That's 21 years. They're real. They've been around longer than my youngest. So they're deep in there. So it's easy for me to write all those voices.
So from a marketing standpoint, though, you did mention that you had a bit of a gap between the books. And I know that some people recommend that if you're doing a series, you try to bring them out pretty consistently over a short period of time. Did you feel at all pressured, or were you, since initially I suspect it was kind of like you were just doing it for fun, did there come a point where you started to feel more pressure to get these out on maybe a quicker timetable?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, every single time, because luckily I had fans saying, okay, you left me on a cliffhanger, let's go. Where's this book? And so, I was starting to work on this other series, and people are like, fracturing time. You said you're going to get this thing out. So I was like, okay, I'm setting everything else aside. I'm going to focus and get this book done. So, there's always pressure, but it was good pressure. It's like the people want to read it. Better do it. That's a really good pressure. Now, if I were listening to my marketing advice, I would have written all the books first, and then I would have published them you do the rapid release. But that would have been 10 more years by the time I got through it all. What I wanted was that quick dopamine. Is this worth doing? get the book out, test market it, see what's going on. Had a lot of great feedback. And so then I got, I'd already had part of book 2 done because I had written so much. And that's how it is. It's just a matter of getting the time to finish it, and to you guys, right? It's a lot, even just getting the first draft down, but that's nowhere near done. So there's a timetable. And I'm a very creative writer. I'm very in tune with my subconscious. It doesn't like to be rushed. If I have a plot problem, I'm going to give it a couple days. And I really like that aspect. I like to have the freedom to let the ideas, sometimes I know where we're going, but I don't know exactly how we're getting there. And to have my subconscious help me create the most out of it. Because with your subconscious, it gives you threads that go through the book, then through the series. And for me, I feel like that gives the reader a much deeper experience. The characters are more real. The plot lines are more shocking and more interesting. I don't want to just write a quick book. That's not for me. So if it takes a while.
You answered my next question, but let's dive into it anyway. So, okay. Plotter versus pantser. I'm the pantser, she's the plotter. Yet somehow we stay married. And I'm with you. I hear what you're saying. The subconscious is a great writing partner. Did you try plotting? Did you try the postcards or the index cards? Did you try all that? Did you try the outlining? Because it doesn't sound like that's where you're at now, and you're at like the other end of the scale.
No. Actually, I started off as a pantser, and now when you want to get a very complicated book together, to me, it's too many pieces to keep in my head. So and then you're running the series, so you've got to connect the elements that were from the other books and all that. So the way I do it is I used to just write. That was stealing time. I wrote. And then I'm not a super structured person. What I did was I used a book called The Marshall Plan for Fiction Writing by Evan Marshall. I don't think it's in print, but you can still get it. It has a workbook. And it gave me the structure. End on a hook at this, if you have this many viewpoint characters and it's this genre, this is your length of book. Here's where you put surprise 1. Here's where you put surprise 2. So it gives you the structure. And I'm like, that is what I need. It had lots of ideas of how to do it. And it made a much tighter book. There was none of this wandering around. So I pantsed it, but I structured it. It's a weird combination. Now what I do, several books I've used the little index cards for each scene. And then I can move them around because I've got 3 viewpoint characters. And sometimes you have room they could go in different places. Sometimes it's chronological. You have to keep them in order. And that's what I did. I had it was a 5 foot by 3 foot, like a poster board, the foam poster board. And I just used a little pin and poked all these things in and it covered the whole board. That was killing time, the one that got too long. And it was a great way. Then you just sit down, you read it. Okay, here's what this chapter's about. Let's get to it. And you don't get too caught up. You have that nagging, what about this piece? Don't forget this thread. Well, if you've got it all plotted out that way, you don't. It still gives you room to be creative and listen to that subconscious. And then you're like, wait, I thought of this before, but then, this element I don't like how that was going. So you need to switch things up. So I do keep it free form, but I have enough structure. I usually start with a mind map. Are you guys familiar with mind maps? Something you might have learned in school. You just draw a circle, and so what I do is I start with the main character. You put Ronnie's the main character in the middle, and then out as a spoke off of that is all the things that could happen. And then each of those spokes run into another plot point or person or something, and then it gives you a non-linear way to find your story and the best version of your story. When you start writing, this is what I found with pantsing. You write linearly. So this happens, this happens, this happens. And all the ideas you have in that process have to go away to be detailed enough to write it down. With the mind map, it gives you a way to just see all the possibilities. And then what I do is I do each character and then maybe even part 1 of the book, depends how the book is going. Then you put it into the plot and I write it down on the cards. And then from there I have my first draft outline. And go from there. And then my last book, I didn't really do all of that detail stuff because I knew, since it's the last book, I knew the things I had to finish. I knew all the pieces, so I had a giant Post-it note on my wall of don't forget these things. So as I'm doing the third draft, it's like, okay, down the road I need to wrap this up. So, I made a list of all those things, and it let me get into the details without feeling like I'm losing a very crucial piece. So, hope that answered that.
Oh, yeah, that's fascinating. I never thought of using a mind map. And
Yeah.
I may actually steal that idea because
Do it.
JT will let you know my mind, when I'm writing, kind of wanders all over the place and I go off on tangents.
I would never say that out loud.
But he's admitting to it.
Yeah, tangents can be great. That's how you get some really interesting story elements, but they also paint you in a corner sometimes. So to
Yeah.
have a way to control them, and you just like in your mind map is that you just follow it through. Where's it going? And you're tapping into your subconscious when you're doing that. You're asking it what's happening next, and it has free form. It's not a structured linear list of things. It's a way your mind can just kind of have it the freedom. You don't think in a straight line. You think all over the place. At least I do, and you do. See, JT may not, but it does help me for sure. I have a very happy inner child, and me and my subconscious are like besties, and not everyone has that. I feel like that helps me with the creative. It's like, we have this conversation going all the time, me and my subconscious. Sometimes I just have to shut up, turn off the news, turn off the whatever noise so that I can hear it,
No, that's a good point. So you mentioned that some of this came about because of your experience with the hurricanes. You also mentioned Outlander and the fact that the time travel maybe came from that. Do you feel maybe a fandom connection to your writing? Not specifically that you're writing something Outlander related, but do elements of things that you enjoy come out in your writing?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I've listened to I usually do audio, listen to all the Outlander books. Not all of them. I kind of stopped when I started writing my book. I'm like, okay, get your own story. Don't go too deep in there. I'm re-listening to when I was putting together Fracturing Time. I was like, I think I'm ready to go through that again. And I realized there's a lot of pieces I don't think I did on purpose, but when you go back in time, there's the witch trials and there's elements that are there. It's probably why I found them so fascinating, because you're, such a dangerous time, especially for a woman. You act a little modern and all of a sudden everybody thinks you're a witch, So there's some repeat elements. I wouldn't say that I certainly didn't use the same kind of time travel. Hers are standing stones, mine are... There's a time travel device that her boyfriend is testing out on her just to see does it work, and he's been trying to send cats back, but they don't really tell you what's going on so much, so he's like, let's try this. So, and then I play with part of Ronnie's past. She's lost her father, and there's a piece that wraps up finally in Fracturing Time where there's a connection back to her late father. In this series, so I'm not sure how I got on that tangent, but there you go.
No, that actually answers what I was asking because
Okay.
I'm also a fan of time travel, but I was a big fan of Quantum Leap. And
I love that show.
I was going to ask if you were familiar with it because you're talking about actually a device that takes you traveling through time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and in that vein, Quantum Leap, he jumps back into somebody else's body that's already there. That's how my series works. That's how the world works. You're going into someone who's in that area or in that time period and everything. And so one day she's a compliant 17-year-old girl from from that time period. The next day she's saying, "Hey, get off me. Don't use those rusty instruments to take blood."
right.
That's a pretty suspicious thing to happen to you. So, I mean, to me, I really play that up. It's like, you say things that are modern. You have thoughts that are modern. You can read and write as a woman back in time. There's a lot of superstition that is, one of the books in the second book, Shattering Time, I take her to 1588, the lost colony of Roanoke Island. It's the
wow.
first colony of the United States before there was the United States. And I loved playing with that. That's so far back that I have her wake up, she lands into the body, and she wakes up and she's being buried. So clumps of dirt are falling on her, and she sits up. And of course, you can imagine the people around the gravesite, what they're thinking back in 1588. So right now, in that moment, she's in a very terrible position and fully knows it. And so everything you do and say after that, you really have to be careful. So that's one of my favorite things to do, is really mess with the reader and be like, what would you do? We all have different choices, but they're not good ones.
God, this is so fascinating. I have about a dozen more questions. Okay,
No, that's fine.
we're going to go ahead and segue into Act Two. We're going to segue into Act Two because maybe you'll answer some of my questions. And what Act Two is we took James Lipton's questions from inside the actor studio and we modified them for a writer's experience because, again, as we said, this is to help writers write. And so we're hoping that your answers will appeal to people out there in the writing business or hoping to be in the writing business. And I hope you had a chance to look at the questions. We're not ambushing you. We want to tell listeners that we never ambush people. We gave you the questions in advance so you had a chance to read them over. So the first question is what was your I'm a real honest to goodness writer moment?
Well, that's an easy one. It's when I held my first book in my hands. It's like all this fiddling around with stuff and all the technology to try to upload it and it actually showed up, and it's this one right here. Stealing Time! And the first moment I held it, I couldn't, it's like, I did this. Everything about this. I actually made the covers, and after this, had a friend of mine who knows how to do Photoshop. We started a business making book covers, and that's what merged into my author consulting business, because I now had the tools, marketing-wise and visual-wise, and then someone can do the techno aspects of making the Photoshop turn a cover into, an actual good selling cover.
That's awesome. So we talked a little bit about your influences, but who would you say is your writing role model and why?
Well, I would definitely say that the reason I started writing was Diana Gabaldon. I was reading her book. She has something called The Outlandish Companion. And it's not one of the stories. It tells you, it's a lot of like, here's all the characters and kind of their family trees, but also how did I write and what was my process? And her process was, I'm going to write a scene and then I'm not going to connect it to anything. And then later I'm going to write another scene. And I'm like, that is so unorganized. I can do that. She made lots of money off of these books. I don't have to be. I thought you had to be super linear and super, organized and structured. That's not her at all. So I thought that kind of gave me permission. It's like, hey, you could actually do this. I would say there's another person. I have a friend, Suzanne Kelman, who writes all kinds of stuff, but she's been doing World War II historical fiction for a while. And she and I we met on Twitter, and we were both putting out our very first books at the same time. And so and she's got a great marketing mind. She's an excellent writer. And so we kind of lived this journey together. Her second book came out about the same time my second book. Then she got picked up by Lake Union Publishing, and her process went skyrocketing. Mine still stayed slow. She had people pushing her, deadlines and all that stuff. And then she got picked up by Book Couture, which is where she's done a lot of her World War II titles. So she sold 500,000 books now. And so I'm like, oh, there's that side where they know how to do all the post-marketing and pre-marketing and, all that stuff. But she and I talk once a week when she's not on huge deadlines, and we talk about what technology we're using, what AI now things are helping us, how do we schedule social, like all that stuff. And it's been really nice for me for that. But the other thing that she's done for me, I have confessed I am not super structured. Each January we meet and we make our goals for the year, and she makes sure I'm actually realistic on my goals. And I keep it on a Post-it right near me on the other side, and I glance at it every couple weeks. I'm like, okay, we know what my goals are. And that has really helped me just to kind of have a plan. It's not a everyday, here's what you're doing. It's more big picture, here's what we're doing this year. And that has really helped me stay on track. So I would definitely say Suzanne Kelman as well.
Excellent. So it comes through. Obviously, you love the writing business. It comes through, in every sentence. But let's be a little bit more specific. What do you love about writing?
I love making up my own little worlds. I have people that I really like and people that I really like to hate that I've made up, and I can have them be however I want. And in the Stealing Time world, it's not our world necessarily. We don't really have time travel and all that. So it's giving me a way to create this universe. My son, my oldest child, he's getting his PhD in industrial engineering and is taking physics and chemistry and all this stuff. So he's been my guy's like, okay, I have this idea of like how quantum string theory works. And he's like, well, there's something new, and let's make sure that so I always tell him my whole plot. And he kind of helps me. I don't get scientific with it because I'm not going to be that. I don't have a degree and all that stuff. But he makes sure that what I'm doing actually makes sense. And so for me, like making this whole world of whatever I want, and it's my world. I think it's amazing that we have the power to do that as writers. You can do whatever you want. Now, my new series is more modern, but there's like a little magical element in there that is my own world and has been so fun. It's like, the other thing is that I absolutely love messing with readers, throwing them red herrings, making sure they think we're going this way. And one of the things that readers have said is my books are very original. And so I'm like, yeah, that's because I love to mess with the reader. And so for me, that's pure joy. I just love all that, all those aspects.
Well, that's obvious, as JT said, that you just absolutely love writing. But there must be something that you dread about writing. And since you have a marketing background, we've had a lot of people say that it is the marketing aspect. Is that true for you, or is it something different?
I love the marketing. I think that's so much fun. What I don't like is the monotony of, okay, we need a whole nother weeks of social media. It's the stuff that is like, you have to keep doing over and over and over, and anything that can help me minimize the pain of that. So using AI to say, here's my book blurb, make 10 or 15 social media posts for that, so that I don't have to use my super creative writing brain or big picture marketing brain on some of that mundane stuff. So that's the stuff that just drives me crazy. But you have to do it. I mean, you've got to have stuff out there. But if there's tools that can help me, I will be using them for sure.
Yep. Okay, so you mentioned the 4 hurricanes. So let's see if we can go in a different direction from that, because we love new answers. What single significant life experience affects your writing, good or bad?
That is a good question. I would say lately my youngest child's been sick, and we finally figured out what, but there's been a lot of doctor's appointments and, questions and hospital stays and all that stuff. And so when you're in that stressful state, I don't write. My creative brain is like, yeah, I got nothing. I don't even have the patience to open the computer. So,
Priorities.
yeah, kids are the priority. So I would say for sure that is like, and I think anyone that ends up with, taking care of their parents or their pets sick, stresses take your brain out of your worlds, and you kind of have to do the easy rote stuff. That's where then the social media thing looks like fun, because I can actually be productive. I don't have to use that deep creative brain, which is shut off kind of at that time. So for sure, I would say that.
That's a rough one, because life can take us out of the writing experience.
Yeah.
You just never know what's going to get thrown at you sometimes.
And everybody has something that does that. You just have to, do the best you can with it and try to get through it. And don't, like, I have friends that then they're like, I'm not writing anymore. I'm like, no, don't do that. That should be the joy. Make sure you come back to it when you can, so that you can preserve that. I think that does a lot I have another friend who's written a book on aging through writing. And so there's all this, her husband is a PhD geriatric researcher, and he has all this information that writing, or anything where you wake up and you have a genius idea or something that you're so passionate about that you want to run and do it, that helps your brain age really well. So having those passion projects. So I try to keep my friends, if that's your maybe you don't like the writing, it's too hard, but if that was your passion project before, you should come back to it. Even if you write nothing for publishing, it's for your own health and longevity to keep those passion projects going. If it has no other purpose than bringing you joy, do it.
And that kind of leads into the next question really well. Because would you recommend the writing life to a loved one, and why?
If they're a good writer. I think that people have this vision, if they come at it like, I'm going to make all this money. No, that is not how it works. It is a hard way to make money, and there's so many obstacles, and there's so much competition. So if you're in it for the joy that we've been talking about, the joy, the creativity, if you feel like that serves a purpose in your life, then I would say, yeah, go for it. If writing is really hard for you, you haven't, like they say, you should write 1,000,000 words before you can write well. If you're still in that process where you don't know what you're doing, I think it's going to be very frustrating. Now, if I wouldn't talk anyone out of it, if they're a good writer, or if they think they're a good writer or want to be a good writer, and are dedicated to learning the craft and, getting to those 1,000,000 words, heck yeah, do it. But it's not like I've talked any of my relatives into it. It's not easy.
Okay, and the last question, and this is the fun question. This is a fun question. We asked this question in the past, and we get all sorts of answers. We learned one of our writer friends was a professional juggler, and one of our other writer friends, who we thought we knew really well, was a comic book collector. So that was, you find out all sorts of interesting things. So what is something unexpected in your past that we won't see in your bio?
Well, I have two things. One is I used to play underwater hockey with a bunch of, they were dudes about 15, 20 years younger than me, and one of them was a Navy SEAL, and several more, like SIG 2 or whatever. And that to me was super fun and very exciting to be able to, I could turn on a dime. These big, huge dudes are very not as agile in the water, so I had a few advantages. The other one I would say, when I read your question, this is what I thought of, is that my dad and stepmother and my mom and stepfather both were entrepreneurs. My mom and stepfather they were counselors, and they had their own practice, and they jumped right in and had there's a lot of gumption you need to have to think you can run your own things. And my dad and stepmother had they were management consultants, and they had their own business. And so I feel like I came to my entrepreneurial spirit, having my own consultancy and writing independently. It's kind of a core to who I am. You don't necessarily see that, but to me, it's like I saw very successful people not have to listen to a boss, not have to go with ideas they thought were kind of dumb, or, whatever issues you may have with your boss. I mean, I think all of us have had terrible working experiences throughout our careers, some, of course, good ones in there too, but it's the frustration of they want more out of you with less pay, and that the go, go, go. Like, I have said goodbye to that. I was in the corporate world for quite a while and paid my dues, and now I know things and I can use those things. And I'm so glad that I'm able to, it's not easy to do. Like, an independent author is exactly that too. You're being an entrepreneur. You're figuring out how to make a business out of this. It's the same idea. And I hope that people that are writing that way have that mindset. This is your business. It's not just, I wrote the book and I don't know how to market it. It's a business. Figure out how to do these things. And if you don't know how, you don't be afraid to hire people who are better at that than you, and get back to the creative stuff, if that's what you really like.
Absolutely. Nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. Okay, so before we let you go, tell us where we can find KJ Waters on the internet. Where can we find your books, the whole shebang?
Okay. kjwaters.com is my website, and I've got all my stuff there. My books are on Amazon. They're also extended published, so you can find them, the ebooks and paperbacks, on Barnes & Noble and all the normal bookstore places. If you're wanting me to make more money, go to Amazon, because I have a better arrangement with them. But my books, you can find everything about them. I've got sample chapters. I also have a newsletter, so on my website, kjwaters.com. I would love for you to join that each week or each month. I only do it once a month, occasionally twice a month. I have whatever I have on sale. I do, like this month I did a quiz, which character are you? And it's the characters in my book for 2026. I usually have a $10 or more giveaway. This time it's I love you a latte. You get a $10 coffee card of your choice. And they just have to pick which character they are in the quiz. But I try to make it fun, and I've had some bigger marketing pushes where we have a bunch of authors promoting together, and I had one this Christmas that was so much fun to put together. It was like we had a recipe each day, and we had each author introducing stuff and giving away free reads and sales on their books and, all kinds of fun things. So I put all those in my newsletter, and I have advanced reader teams for anyone that wants to help authors get their books more reviews when they launch and that kind of thing. So I have a lot of fun things in there. So sign up. It's on my website, kjwaters.com/newsletter, if you want to be part of that.
Excellent. Excellent. And we'll make sure to get that information into the blog post. And so we want to thank KJ Waters for being with us today. This has been incredibly fascinating. I want this to go on for another hour because I'm learning so much. And this has been so very interesting. But as I said before, the CC&JT Amateur Hour likes to feature a writer every other week to talk about the craft and the trade of writing. It's not something you can just fall off the log and do, as KJ is very artfully and craftfully has illustrated for our purposes. You can check out this podcast and many podcasts like it starting at our website at www.carsonhume.com. And also, if you're in Northern Nevada and you're fascinated by this interview and you're a writer, you can join the Sierra Arts Literary Community through the Sierra Arts Foundation in Reno, Nevada. We do a second podcast called the Nevada Author Network, and we do it over there on our LLC website at Two More Books. So again, thank you, KJ, for joining us. This has been great.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was great chatting with you guys. I loved your questions. This was so much fun. I appreciate all your work you put into this podcast and helping other authors.
So thank you, and thank you again, and thank you, everybody, and please follow along. Take care. Bye-bye.